Let's just spend a few minutes thinking about teaching the older language learner. When I say older, I mean someone who's over the age of 50. I don't know if you have taught anyone over 50, but sometimes it's not at all easy, as you may have already experienced. But let's first be positive. Let's first look at their strengths. What does the older language learner have that's in their favor? Firstly, their ability to plan and strategize. They've learned through previous challenging tasks. That's helpful. The ability to think logically and reason inductively. That's useful when it comes to trying to understand the grammar and understanding how you use words. That's helpful. Thirdly, if they've learnt another language before for using it, they can compare and contrast and make intelligent assumptions. That's going to help them when learning Chinese. And fourthly, they're older language learners. They are highly motivated to learn what they perceive is useful and practical, what can be applied practically. And hopefully, they'll see learning Chinese, hopefully they want to go to China or are learning in China, as something that's really useful for daily living. So these are four things which are the strengths of the older language learner. But let's now look at the weaknesses. Firstly, their hearing isn't so good. And because their hearing isn't so good, their pronunciation often is inaccurate and their tones are incorrect. And that's frustrating for them. They think they're saying what the teacher is saying, but because their hearing isn't so good, often their pronunciation and especially the tones are not accurate. Secondly, of course, memory. Actually, it's not that they can't memorize things. I still remember things, a bit more of a struggle than a 20-something, but I can remember things. The problem for the older learner is to recall them, to retrieve them from their memory quick enough. Because the problem is, when we're talking with people, we need to retrieve vocabulary, recall it quickly. And often, they have that problem. They can memorize, but they can't recall words quick enough. Another problem with memory is decline in the speed of processing things. They can't do it so quickly as the younger learner. And this can have two different results, both frustrating to the older learner. One, either they go through the textbooks very slowly and sense, oh, I've been learning this language now for 2 months and I'm only in lesson 5 and I still can't say anything very much. Or they go through the textbooks too quickly, and often that's the problem of the teacher, and they say, oh, I'm now in book 3, but I know that I haven't mastered book 1 yet properly, and here comes a new lesson with another 40 vocabulary words to memorize. And there's that that drowning feeling. I'm being drowned with all this vocabulary, but I know I can't really say very much. So these two things to do with memory, failure to recall quickly enough, and also the speed of processing the language has slowed down, is a real problem for older people. And of course with Chinese, the problem is there are very few words in Chinese that are similar to English. If it was French, it would be much easier. English, table. French, table. But what's Chinese? 桌子. There's no relation to the English, and what makes it worse is there's 2 bytes of information for every word. How to pronounce it, and of course, which tone it should be said on. So memory is a problem for older people. The third area of weakness for the older person is the area of self-esteem. That doubt, that lack of self-confidence that I can master this language. You see, because every day they're making mistakes. They're making mistakes in class with the teachers correcting, and they make mistakes outside, and it keeps nagging away at them, and they keep saying to themselves, I told me so. I knew I wouldn't be able to master Chinese. And so this eats away at their self-confidence. The other problem in relation to self-esteem was if they were successful people before, now they look stupid. You see, when I was in England, when I worked as an accountant, I could say to myself, Martin, you're pretty clever, able, competent. But then when I go to China and try to learn Chinese, no one says, Martin, you're clever, you're able and competent. And I don't like being seen as a failure. It hurts my pride. And so what the older language learner does is to protect themselves, they avoid taking risks. They stay indoors. They go shopping where they can use English to protect their self-esteem. And so the older language learner, either their confidence is being eaten away, or their self-esteem, I don't like being seen as a failure, I don't like people laughing at me, I want them to think I'm clever. The result is that they're sending negative messages to themselves on a daily basis, and it's eating away at their confidence. You see, I made a stupid mistake again today. And they keep sending these negative messages to themselves. So, let's try and be positive from now onwards. 怎么办? How can they compensate for their decline in hearing and memory, as well as the daily attacks on their self-esteem? What can they do? Well, here are some suggestions. Firstly, they need to find out more about themselves as a language learner. And what's their preferred learning style? Are they mainly visual or auditory or hands-on? Their personality, does it help or does it hinder? What are the good things about their personality as a language learner? What are their learning strengths and weaknesses? Okay? Find out more about themselves as a language learner. Secondly, and this is very important, they need to individualize the learning program. How do they do that? Firstly, by hiring a personal tutor who suits their learning style and personality, and particularly this, avoid large classes. You see, the problem with the older learner when they're in a class is they're always at the bottom of the class because the 20-somethings in the class pick it up quickly, are talking fluently quickly, and the older learner is still struggling. And so every day when they leave class and go back to where they're living, they say, oh, I was bottom of the class yet again today. But if they have one-on-one with a personal tutor who knows how to suit their learning style and personality, when they finish class and walk back home, what can they say to themselves? I was top of the class again. And the feeling's very different. So go for one-on-one, avoid large classes. Secondly, the course content must be relevant and therefore motivating. You don't want to have textbooks that are not giving you language that you can use straight away. The course content, the content of the textbooks must be relevant and interesting. And also taught at a pace that you can handle, so the daily load is not too overwhelming. And that's why you must have one-on-one, so you and the teacher can negotiate what's the right speed. The problem with classes is it's the teacher who decides the speed, and if you can't keep up, you get very frustrated and you feel overwhelmed and that drowning feeling. So if you can have one-on-one, you can go at a pace that you can handle, not too overwhelming. As regards learning strategies, learning ideas, give your students, show them that other lecture on learning strategies, and give them lots of ideas how to get the language in and how to practice it, get it out. And give them these range of strategies and get them to try them out to see which ones suit them. And here, because of their weak auditory, their hearing is down, isn't so good, major on visual and also tactile, hands-on, handling the things, playing with the vocabulary cards. Okay? These things are going to help the language learner. So let's just summarize. What's key for the older language learner is one-on-one, not classes, large classes. The content must be relevant and interesting. That's going to be motivating, because remember, older language learners are more interested in learning what's practical, what they can put to use immediately. And thirdly, the pace. It must be an appropriate pace for the language learner. But I want to mention one more thing, there's this. Let's bring this in now. How can we help them improve their memory? There's certain things they can do that's going to help them. One, encourage them to do physical exercise. Go jogging or fast walking or cycling or swimming. Physical exercise is going to help keep the brain more alert. Secondly, tell them to get sufficient sleep, and then during the day, drink lots of coffee. That's going to help them have an alert mind. Also, right brain activities. Often with language learning, we overuse the left brain. We go through vocabulary lists. We explain the grammar rules. And what you need to do is to think up ways where the student can use their right brain more. Whether it's pictures of the vocabulary, whether it's using colour to help them remember the tone, whether it's activities to play with the content of that lesson, help them to use their right brain along with the left brain. Avoid just left brain activities. And finally, as we said, more hands-on stuff. Maybe take them out to the market, take them out to the department store, take them to the railway station to get that ticket. More practical, hands-on. One thing I want to talk about now is topics. What's key is we need to start off with topics that are most frequently used. Now, what are those topics? First, cover those topics most frequently talked about. What are they? Introducing themselves. I'm from England. My name is. I'm a student. Buying things. 我要, number measure noun. Ordering a meal. 我要, and whatever the food is. Asking about Chinese people's background. What's your name? Where do you live? What do you do? Note this. These 4 topics cover approximately 80% of what they talk about on a daily basis. And so if we cover those first 4 topics thoroughly, they'll be able to start talking and start to feel good about themselves. So, hopefully the textbook has those 4 topics, but the one on introducing yourself is an American and I'm British, and he's a doctor and I'm an accountant, and so we want to help the student rewrite the dialogues in their textbook on those 4 topics so that they apply to the student's own situation. Then the teacher, firstly, correct, if the student tried to write it themselves, correct it, and then record it. And then this is key, for the first 10 minutes of each lesson, take one of those dialogues and act it out together with the student. Do it every lesson. Take one dialogue, maybe over and over again, but that doesn't matter. Hence, providing the student with opportunities to be successful, sense progress, and therefore gain a greater degree of self-confidence. Remember what we said about the weaknesses? The things they're doing are eating away at their self-confidence. And so we need to think about what can we do to give them self-confidence. And one thing is just to take what they're doing each day, that 80%, and practice it over and over again in class so that it does get into their long-term memory and begins to get out fluently. And so when they are fluent in these 4 topics, we can gradually add more. For instance, sports, or if they like traveling, or talking about learning Chinese, or days and dates, we can add on more things. And so this is key. While slowly moving on to new lessons in the textbook, at the same time, keep practicing these 4, and then gradually more topics. So, what about the classroom? Finally, let's look at the classroom atmosphere. It needs to be warm and friendly. Remember, they're lacking in self-confidence. They're sending negative messages to themselves every day. Oh, I won't be able to learn Chinese. Oh, I'm a failure. And so we need a warm and friendly atmosphere, helping them to experience regular successes by taking those 4 topics and helping them get fluent in them. And also, you, the teacher, needs to be patient, very patient, and also encouraging them. And so, as regards this, to come to a conclusion, it's not that older people can't learn new things. Actually, they're learning new things all the time. But the key thing is it useful? Can they apply it? And so, if it is, then they'll be interested, they'll be motivated, and they'll be willing to press on and get the language. So maybe they won't ever get to a high level in Chinese, but there's no reason why they can't get to a reasonable level, enough language for living in China and enjoying living there. Okay, thank you.